From the 1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska, this is the End Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store.
Well, welcome into the 1011 Now streaming studio. I'm Danielle Shank alongside Sports Director Kevin Suits for the End Report Husker Show, brought to you by the Fat Dog's Convenience Store. So seeking the second road win in a row for the first time since 2006, and we will not be getting it.
No. That's going to extend. Wow, they're trying to win back-to-back road games, and will it even happen this year? I don't know. Danielle, if they played like they did tonight, Nebraska, I'm curious how many wins they're going to have.
Yeah.
They're at 5 right now, playing for bowl eligibility. That effort doesn't get you many wins.
It definitely doesn't.
Especially in the Big Ten with UCLA playing a little bit better right now, and USC's a feisty opponent. I don't know. That's a flush it and just move on kind of game. 24-6 final score. I don't know how long we need to talk about that game, but it was pretty ugly. And if there's one prevailing thing that fans are going to talk about, it's the fact that Dylan Raiola was sacked 9 times.
Which is, I think they were saying it was a Minnesota program record.
Correct.
That's tough for us to watch and consume, and you're just like, how does this keep happening? And, they mentioned it in a game earlier this year. They were trying to address it at practice, and apparently they need to go back to addressing it even harder.
It did not help up front that Nebraska lost Elijah Pritchett. He was ejected from the game, something that's going to be reviewed, and there might be some sort of punishment handed down from the Big Ten as a targeting penalty from an offensive player, which is insanely rare. And then Rocco Spindler left the game in the first half with an injury. So there's 2 starting offensive linemen who are not on the field in the second half. And the second half is where Nebraska's offense was fairly lifeless.
Yeah.
No sustained drives, no real scoring threats. And in the second half is where Minnesota outscored Nebraska 17-0.
Yeah, and so we'll get to some of the game stats. Do you want to get to Chase? Let's
let's
can get to him.
Chase Madison has been reporting live for us at Huntington Bank Stadium in Minneapolis. He was on the sidelines for a fairly ugly game. Chase, your takeaway on this contest?
Yeah, Kevin, well, I think you chalk it up to a physicality standpoint between Nebraska and Minnesota, and we saw this against Michigan as well, just getting beaten in the trenches, something that really just kind of set the tone of this game, especially in the second half. Minnesota controlled the time of possession. They also just controlled the line of scrimmage against Nebraska, running short pass plays and short runs that was just chunk yardage play after play. But you have to look at the Nebraska offense. While the Nebraska defense didn't play great at times, you have to look at the Nebraska offense in the second half. 4 drives, 3 punts, and 1 turnover on down, something that you can't do. And it felt like they almost threw in the towel at the very end there. It just I guess a wake-up call at this point in the season, but really it's almost something that was a little bit more embarrassing than something that you just flush and move on from. Last year, 5-1, they wore the road whites, or what angry fans will call them, the surrender whites, and they got blown out in Bloomington. This one was a much more game that they came into thinking that they should win this game if they do the right things. And a 6-point performance on the offensive side of the ball when Minnesota wasn't wowing them. They were dinking and dunking and moving slowly down the field. For Nebraska not to capitalize on some of that, really just disappointing.
Chase, you seem to have a really big issue with the fact that Nebraska punted the ball in the fourth quarter. The Huskers were down what? It was more than 2 scores at that time. Tell me a little bit more about that. For me, I didn't really seem like it really struck a nerve with me, but clearly it did with you. So shed some light on that situation.
Well, they were on their own 37-yard line. So I think there is some room for debate there. I think it might have been a 3rd and 3, and they gave up a following sack, and then you sort of had to punt it. I didn't love the way that the offense was moving. I thought when Minnesota gave Nebraska a little bit of tempo, it kind of mixed things up. And then you saw it towards the end there, towards the end of at least at times, when they kind of went quicker, it worked against Minnesota. Granted, it was a 3-score game in the fourth quarter, but it just felt like the offense wasn't changing anything. They were doing the same things over and over again, not trying to inject any life into it, and it just wasn't working. So I'm not too upset with the punts, and also a clean sheet in the turnover margin tonight. So really the offense played a clean game, but just not a productive game at all. And when you look at Minnesota, this was a team 4-2, a gritty, a good team. PJ Fleck and the Gophers have now won 7 in a row, as you guys mentioned, against Nebraska. But this was a game that Nebraska came into with all the storylines this week, really thinking that they should have won. And just to really lay an egg like that, it's not just about the punting, just really a nightmare performance on offense.
Yeah. How do you? I mean, you've been amongst the fans, and what was? How did they feel?
Well, the scenes were much different here than in College Park, and I think, granted, that was part of the momentum of the game. But there was 48,000 in attendance here tonight at Huntington Bank Stadium, and there might have been 8,000 or 10,000 Husker fans, but you couldn't hear them. Really, the Minnesota home environment really sucked the life out of the Nebraska fans, and they were sort of spread out kind of over behind me amongst the left side of the word Minnesota, and a lot of them were leaving during the fourth quarter, even the ones that had driven 6 hours and made the trip, and then in turn Minnesota followed it up by storming the field. Granted, they beat the number 25 team in the country. I don't know how great of an upset it was. It was technically a one-possession betting line. But I think just the energy in this stadium just didn't favor the Huskers at all, and you could tell by their composure on the bench and then the way they played in the second half.
Fans love it's Friday night.
Yeah.
If you want to get a juicy Lucy, you couldn't stay in the stadium too much longer. You had to go, and who wants to watch that anyway? It just was a pretty ugly performance. To Chase's point about that offense not really finding its rhythm, Nebraska only ran 54 plays. Like, it's hard to find a rhythm when you run 54 plays for the duration of a game. I can't think of too many games with an offense that low of a number. And we're critical of Nebraska running 54 plays. Minnesota ran 55. But Chase gave PJ Fleck some credit, and I would echo that too. It's a brilliant game plan. Keep the ball out of Dylan Raiola's hands. You can't score the football if you don't have it, unless you're doing a pick six or a scoop and score. So it was actually a pretty brilliant game plan from Minnesota, and I thought they executed it really well. And I think when Fleck took his team into the locker room at halftime up by 1, he probably told his guys, we kind of got him where we want him. But because Chase, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could sense Nebraska, even though it was a 1-point game, Nebraska was teetering a little bit there in the second half. No?
What do you mean exactly, teetering?
Like, they just, even though they were right there, it was a 1-point game, it still felt like Minnesota. It felt like Minnesota had a score, like a full touchdown lead. Like, there was some pressure that Nebraska was operating with.
Yeah, and to your point, I think the biggest tell of the way this game went was, really how they came out of the locker room in the second half. Because the way the first half ended, they get the ball back with 1 minute and 11 seconds left and 2 timeouts. Dana Holgerson of Dana Holgerson Past is running some chunk plays, some deep digs, some crossers, maybe a tight end seam route, and you're moving the ball into field goal range. Instead, it ends with Dylan Raiola getting sacked for the 5th time in the half, and then struggling walking off the field into the locker room as they let the last 20 seconds expire. So just the energy going into the locker room wasn't good, even though it was a 1-point game. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing that kind of plagued this offense was Minnesota, great game plan. They weren't going to turn the ball over. They were going to be efficient and dink and dunk and run the clock. But Nebraska's benefited these past few weeks off of big offensive plays, explosive plays. And besides a 43-yard pass to Quinn Clark, it didn't feel like they had any really back-breaking, open, big-door plays. I know Isaiah Hunter had a drop in the third quarter that could have resulted in a touchdown or a big play. But you saw it against Michigan State, and you saw it against Maryland. these big plays really propelled the offense and helped the offense, and they didn't get any of them tonight, and the offense couldn't do anything.
Well, Chase just mentioned the third quarter and then Isaiah Hunter drop. Nebraska had the ball coming out of the locker room, as he just illustrated, in a 1-point game. The third quarter, Nebraska totaled 21 yards in the third quarter. They had the ball in a 1-point game, and so if you're trying to really narrow down what happened, what went wrong, the third quarter went wrong.
Yeah.
And once the third quarter got away from Nebraska, whatever it was, a 10-point lead at one point, it just seemed insurmountable.
Yeah.
Once Minnesota made it a 2-score game, I mean, Nebraska, I would have called you crazy if you would have told me before the game that Nebraska would not score a touchdown against Minnesota. I think that's nuts.
Yeah.
They had 2 field goals. That's all the offense the Huskers had.
And Emmett Johnson, maybe a little disappointing performance from him, considering, he was Mr. Football his senior year out there in Minnesota and didn't get recruited by the Gophers. So he had a little vengeance in there, I think, going into the game. But offensively, I don't think he probably had as much production as he wanted to.
No, and I think some of that's to the offensive line. Chase, it seemed like Emmett tried hard, right? He still ran with a high motor. It was just he had to fight for everything he got.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely right. And I also think they leaned on the pass a little bit too much. And then when they got down, they had to lean on it. I felt like he was running the ball well. He finished with 100 total scrimmage yards. But it was a little bit of added in garbage time or just when they were down at the end. But he had a few chunk plays. I feel like he was going to break one if they'd kept giving him the ball. And they passed it early and often, and it wasn't working, to your point. They didn't run a ton of plays. And then when they got down by 14, or they got down 14, and then they had to pass it. So, I don't think it was really his – it was probably his worst performance of the season numbers-wise, but he was given good effort. It's just really the offense wasn't feeding him the ball a ton.
Okay. Do we want to kind of break off here, or do we want to ask about the Matt Rule rumor question? We want to address that here too.
Chase, since he's there, Chase, did you hear anything about Matt Rule and his future at Nebraska? Did fans mention anything? Did you see anything out of Coach Rule's demeanor on the sideline, pregame, postgame tonight?
Well, there was definitely, it felt like a pep in his step pregame. It felt like he, new eyeballs were on him, and, he's not afraid of the spotlight, but he definitely was embracing it, and it seemed like the long conversation he had midfield with PJ Fleck pregame, there was probably some comments there, media members, other people that from the Big Ten that aren't in Nebraska circles but are aware of obviously these headlines. So it was interesting to see, but in terms of after the game, and Rule looked, obviously disappointed and really just dissatisfied with the effort from his team. Now, I will say, Sierra Wright was asked post-game about the headlines and storylines this week, and if it played a factor maybe into some of the guys in the locker room. He shut the question down pretty quickly, but clearly the players are aware of it. That's by no means. So I think this obviously didn't help his case if you're looking at a coaching resume or you're looking at ranked wins. Another note as well, Nebraska, as a ranked team, hasn't beat another FBS team since, I think, 2019. So they haven't done well when they're ranked in the top 25. And Rule also hasn't been able to get over that hump in the few chances he's had.
Okay, Chase, thank you for your time. Appreciate the reports tonight from Minneapolis. And we apologize that you were on assignment for a really lousy performance from Nebraska.
A taste of the Big Ten. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Drive safe.
Get a Juicy Lucy while you're there. Now, Danielle, to kind of finish up the thought about Matt Rule, like Chase mentioned, it's hard to shut that stuff out.
Yeah.
Right? One thing that the court of public opinion is not going to make the hire at Penn State. Pat Kraft is going to make the hire at Penn State. But what doesn't help for the people that are evaluating Matt Rule as a quote-unquote leading candidate for that position is this game was on Friday night. There are not many college football games on Friday night. So there's a lot of eyeballs on this game, especially with what has transpired over this week. So the common college football fan, specifically the Penn State fans, probably watching that game pretty closely.
Yeah.
And I'm fairly confident most everybody's pretty underwhelmed about Matt Rule's candidacy at Penn State.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this one game doesn't represent 20 years of coaching, as a head coach and what he's done at Nebraska. But, yeah, that doesn't help some of the people that have skepticism about Matt Rule going to Penn State because that was, man, when you look at Coach Rule's losses at Nebraska, there's now 13 of them. That's one that's going to stick out a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because of what this season had been trending toward.
Exactly, yeah. And, I mean, when it comes to the rumors and about Rule going there, I know there was a lot of people saying that his track record with ranked wins and things like that are a reason why they let Franklin go in the first place. So why would they want someone to come replace him for that? Did you happen to catch the Pat McAfee show? I know
yes,
that Rule was on there. What are your thoughts on some of the things he said?
Well, I mean, he's continuing to exist in this space. And I talked about this morning on KLIN, their Friday Husker Tailgate show. Like, I compare it to a car that's driving down the road and is straddling the center line. Because right now, no one's getting in the left lane, which would represent staying at Nebraska. Nobody's getting in the right lane, which is going to Penn State. Like, they're existing in a space which is right in between. And that can invoke some fatigue on the fan base. It can be hard on the team. And I'm just curious, how long can both sides live in the middle of the lane? At some point, you got to pick a lane. Mm-hmm. And maybe the lane has been picked. It's just not being publicized right now. Yeah. But, yeah.
Yeah, and I know some are like, oh, well, now's the time to give him an extension or, kind of similar to seeing Kurt Signetti getting one. But with this loss to Minnesota, that isn't a good look, and they were probably hoping to announce an extension if he won this and the next game against Northwestern. I mean, not who's to say that one's not still coming, but to help secure things.
Yeah,
here at
every
Nebraska.
passing game will change the narrative, right? If Nebraska extends Matt Rule after the Maryland win, hip, hip, hooray. If Nebraska extends Matt Rule after a loss to Maryland, what are you doing? And so, like, that's just kind of the way it goes. And trust me, Danny, I don't think that Penn State, if they're going to hire Matt Rule, the result of the Minnesota game is not going to impact what Pat Kraft thinks about Matt Rule as a candidate for that position. Like, it may already be done one way or the other. We don't know. And that's what that's what I'm saying. Like, they're just in this very odd space. And because they're existing in the middle of the road, like, there's going to be some speed bumps, and the road's going to turn right and then turn back left because that's college football. Nobody saw that Miami was going to lose tonight. So, like, it's just buckle up because this season it was just kind of cruising along, right, with a nice win against Michigan State and then a nice win at Maryland, and boom, now you've hit a little bit of adversity with a loss to Minnesota, and you got to come back home and try to get right against Northwestern next Saturday.
Yeah, and we'll pop up the stats here a little bit to see, one bright spot for Nebraska. I think Chase had mentioned, or maybe you did, no turnovers, no interceptions or fumbles. I was hoping for that from Minnesota, but, neither side turned it over. But, I mean, on paper, besides rushing yards.
The numbers are kind of gross. Really, like, for what this offense has looked like over the course of the season, this is far below what Nebraska had averaged. And even if you look at Minnesota's running backs, Darius Taylor and then Femi Boboji, if I'm mispronouncing his last name, but those two guys, they both average under 4 yards per carry. And tonight, I believe Taylor's over 6. So they saw something, they attacked it, they committed to the run. Nebraska probably still going to lead the nation in passing defense because Minnesota threw for 153? I mean, that's That's not going to change Nebraska's average too much, but still, they were effective in the pass, and they had a passing touchdown against Nebraska, which has only happened a couple of times this season.
Yeah, and I mean, the time of possession seemed pretty even, I mean, according to the game stats, but when you were watching it, it just felt like Minnesota was in control almost the whole time.
Great point. Yeah, that's crazy. To see those numbers side by side, if you watched the game, you would have thought that it would have been, ways tilted in Minnesota's favor. And I think it's just because the second half, and plus Minnesota wasn't able to run the clock all the way out at the end of the game. Nebraska got it back with around 3 minutes left. So, Nebraska didn't do anything with that possession. So you might as well chalk up those 3 minutes to Minnesota. And then the number looks a little bit different because then they're pushing 35 minutes of time of possession compared to Nebraska's 25. And that's more what it felt like.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else from the game-wise? Or
no.
Okay.
Because
I guess beforehand, did you see, I wanted to point this out, that they had a little commemorative spot for Greg Sharp. We'll try to put that up here.
Which is an amazing gesture right there. Minnesota, if you guys remember, as the late Greg Sharp was battling cancer, they delivered one of their oars to Greg Sharp. And it was a very classy gesture. They were among the many teams across the Big Ten that, showed their respect to Greg, as he battled cancer last year. So for them to have that in the press box, and from everything I understand, the broadcasting team for the University of Nebraska, when they got into the press box in Minnesota, that kind of caught them in the feels. I don't know that they were prepared for that, and it was a very touching gesture. And now we learn after the fact from Ben McLaughlin and Damon Benning and Jessica Cootie that Minnesota is one of Greg's favorite road trips. So
yeah, that's what they had put on the little description, that it was his favorite road trip and road booth, and that was the reason why, is the nice little things like that. And catching the post game, PJ Fleck, also talking about how this game was a little bit more than just a game with, something like this and the Broken Chair Trophy, raising money for charities related to cancer. So it all kind of just circles back.
Right. Beyond the game, there's some heartfelt and touching stuff with there being the pink out. Nebraska's helmets had the pink face mask. They had the pink end, the pink stripe. Of course, PJ Fleck and Matt Rule agreed to do this way ahead of this game and just highlight breast cancer awareness. And then the tribute for Greg Sharp, very good stuff. But the game itself. Yeah,
and we'll talk about Husker volleyball, which was much better than watching this football game. Harper Murray leading the way with 13 kills. It was pretty, our outsides were going off a little bit. Good hitting percentage from Murray at 500. Same with Landfair. She had 8 kills, and of course, spreading out the offense a little bit. But some are wondering, will the Huskers lose a set in Big Ten play?
25 sets in a row now.
Crazy stuff coming from them right now.
Yeah, and they're in conference play. That's what's fascinating about they have not lost any of their last 25 sets. It's one thing to do that in non-con when you're playing, Wright State, all due respect, right? Wright State and Cal and some of those opponents. But right now, Nebraska's in the league.
Yeah.
The best league in college volleyball. And they are rolling right now. What time did the match get over? We were out covering high school football, and people were jokingly saying, can they wrap that thing up in 1 hour so they could flip over and watch Nebraska football? Now, that's not actually possible to win a college volleyball match in an hour. I don't think it would be. But Nebraska has had a few volleyball matches which have lasted like an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, and that was about, I think, what this one ended up being.
Really?
Because it was a little bit before 7 o'clock that I'm like, oh, we're already done with the second set.
So you missed the first possession of the football game and you're all good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Back to Huskers playing in Big Ten. I think we've talked about it before just in the newsroom that Wisconsin's probably going to be without Charlie Furbringer, their star setter. Likely she's dealing with shoulder injury. So they're without her. Indiana, we've kind of talked about, people thought that they've been looking great this year, but they got swept by Michigan State. And Penn State dropped the first 2 sets tonight to Washington.
I saw that.
So...
And one of them was not close, 25-11.
Yep, first set. I didn't see how the game ended up, but that, I mean, those are our two biggest opponents, and they're not looking too hot right now.
So the Big Ten essentially is Nebraska and a bunch of other teams that I shouldn't say a few other teams that are a little bit below what people expected, but it's still a good conference. And I don't know if he caught Dave Shondel's quote from this past weekend when Nebraska went to Purdue and swept the Boilermakers. Basically, he said, I just wanted to get it over. Like they just showed up to their own home arena just waiting for the match to end from the beginning.
At least we didn't embarrass ourselves.
Yes.
Right? Something like that.
So that's the goal when you're playing Nebraska. Don't embarrass yourself. And what's fascinating for me, Danielle, is like when you look at the box scores from these volleyball matches, there's nothing impressive. Mm-hmm. Like there's no stat line that you're like, wow, like that person must have just taken over. Like, no, because they just throw the ball around. They dig the ball. Yeah. Bergen usually is right around a double-double. She'll have 30, 40 assists in a 3-set match, sometimes double-digit digs. Yeah. But tonight, Harper Murray has 13 kills. She hits 500. I guess that's the one thing with the stats to look at. I mean, it's not the sexiest of stats, but like look at the hitting percentages. Oftentimes, Nebraska will have like 4 or 5 players hit over 400, which is insane. But yeah, like you're not getting matches where Harper has 21 kills and Andy Jackson has 11 kills and Becca Alec has 10 kills and Virginia Adriano has 10. Like, no, like you maybe get one player in double figures. In fact, I think there's been a couple of matches where nobody's been in double figures.
Yeah, because Bergen runs such a spread out offense, and we have hitters everywhere that you can just get it up to anyone, and you don't. Luckily, I think honestly, luckily for us, we don't have to rely on somebody like a Kennedy Martin, because like, what if she has a bad game,
right.
Or Olivia Babcock? Pitt dropped a couple of sets to Notre Dame today, the first two. So I mean, sure, it's great to have someone who can do some of that heavy hitting, but I think I would rather have a Nebraska team where we, any one time somebody could step up, but everybody's at least pitching in every single game.
Cold night for Harper. Who cares? Go to Becca.
Yeah.
Cold night for Rebecca. Oh, who cares? Go to Andy.
Yeah, or
there's just too many options.
Or like if when Virginia was kind of having an off night the other night, and they just put check in and just casually drops like 8 kills. From the bench. So that's really promising from this Nebraska team. They'll play Michigan on Sunday. You can catch that game on Big Ten Plus. That's also where you can watch men's basketball exhibition tomorrow against number 8 BYU.
Brett Hoiberg said don't make any grand conclusions based on the outcome on Saturday. And I don't know if I'm reading between the lines of Fred Hoiberg, who is just a delight to be around. Like he knows that this is going to be a really tough test. I mean, opening. A lot of teams for exhibition play. What are the women are playing, like College of St. Mary?
Yeah, or like Doane right down the road or something last year.
So, you just play a lesser opponent, get some feel-good stuff in there. But it's sold out. Pinnacle Bank Arena is going to be rocking on an October Saturday afternoon as Nebraska welcomes the number 8 team in college basketball. And this isn't a team that has Juwan Gary. It doesn't have Bryce Williams. They've got to find some scoring. Rink Mass does return. Jamarcus Lawrence is back to run the point. So there is some familiarity, but seeing this team all operate together. Fred has seen it time and time again from practice, which traces back months, but now it's fans' opportunity to see what this 2025-26 outfit is going to look like for Nebraska. And BYU might mix and match its rotations too. So that's what these exhibitions are for. So I like how Fred tried to throw a flag of caution out there before they even tip off the season. Yeah. Just because Nebraska, that's what an exhibition is for.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of similar to when Nebraska teams come play Nebraska volleyball, it's a good sense to see of where you're at, where your team's at. I mean, especially right off the bat of the year going up against number 8, it's good to see what you can work on, how you stack up against a team in the top 10.
See how Cale Jacobs is going to start, and that's amazing. Because it became like a fun, feel-good story during the Crown when Nebraska went on its postseason run. Everyone's like, yeah, Cale Jacobson, cool. Like, no, he's like a legitimate starter now. He's going to start against the number 8 team in the country in the Huskers' debut for the upcoming year. He may be in the starting 5 this year. It's pretty cool.
All exciting stuff. Any other thoughts on anything from tonight?
Nope. On to Northwestern.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. And thanks so much for watching, everyone. And for more Husker coverage, you can visit our website and follow us on all our social platforms. From our newsroom to wherever you are, we'll see you on the next stream.
You've been listening to the Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch the Report on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m. and download the 1011 Now app.